Hey Eurovision fans, it's Tom Cunty from Shanghai back for another Eurovision reaction video. Today I'm going to be discussing the voting scandal that happened in the second semi-final of Eurovision 2022. I'm going to talk about what happened and what I think they could do in the future to stop it happening again. So, let's kiki. As always, I will use timestamps in the time bar. I'll also leave them in the description below as well. I'm not 100% sure. I'll break this up into probably like 5 or 6 chunks based on what I'm talking about. First of all, just to explain why I'm doing this video, in case you didn't see, I already did a video reacting to the breakdown of the points in the first semi-final. I looked at the televote and the jury and compared them just to look for any like interesting patterns that arose or anything like that. I was obviously going to do the same thing for the second semi-final, but this voting scandal that's kind of come out with these 6 countries possibly, let's put them straighter a little bit. They may be naughty, but they still deserve to be in a straight line. The voting scandal that's emerged with these 6 countries in semi-final number 2. It was getting to the point where it was taking over so much that video. It just needs a separate video, otherwise it just gets too much and it's too confusing. So I will do that breakdown of the points in the semi-final number 2, but I will do it separately and I won't talk about this there. If there's anything in this video which is incorrect, please let me know and I will put it in the pinned comment at the top, any changes that I need to make. I've tried to provide the most accurate information that I can. A quick disclaimer before I go into like some of the juicier, sexier details is that I'm very pro EBU. I really appreciate what they do every year in terms of organizing the competition. I don't think it's an easy job managing so many different delegations who have so many different demands and viewpoints and want different things. I think they do a very good job given the time and budget that they have. I think that they generally do a very good job in managing cheating within the extent of their capabilities. Obviously, it's impossible to do it perfectly without spending gigantic amounts of money. I also want to explain I am very pro jury as well. I don't think that this is a reason we should get rid of the jury. We need the jury because we see there's a huge bias in televote towards happier, folkier songs like Yodel It and the Moldovan song this year. Not to say that the songs don't have merits. I do think that they are an important part of the competition, but they get a very disproportionately large televote. If we go to televote only, it does definitely penalize songs that maybe are a little bit more introspective or arty or take a little bit more time to digest or on the slower side. Plus, we've seen that televote definitely favors the songs later in the show because they're more recent to people's memories. Plus, more people tune in towards the end of the show. So jury, I'm 1000% behind them. Let's talk about the 2 main ways that you can cheat. So there's obviously with the televote and the jury. The jury is much easier to cheat with because you've only got 5 people on a jury. So really it's less expensive. Let's put it this way. You can cheat with the televote. I'll talk about it later. But with the jury, yeah, if you have connections, you find out who the people are. Jury names are released before the competition, so you know it's just a case of getting their phone number, their contacts. Obviously, if you know the head of the delegations, that's probably something that's quite easy to do. Head of delegations obviously meet each other every year, they know each other, they have contacts. Whether I'm not saying that the head of delegations are organizing this, but my point is it's easy enough to get in contact with those people if you want to, and then it's a case of just incentivizing them. I guess what kind of incentives could you possibly give to someone? There's lots of ways to incentivize people. So definitely juries is the easiest way if you want to manipulate votes. It is also possible to manipulate the televote. We did see that in the past, specifically definitely with small countries like San Marino. We've seen the San Marino vote was so easy to manipulate that they don't do it anymore. So the San Marino televote right now is an aggregate of countries with similar voting patterns, their televote. So we don't even have a San Marino televote. I can't remember what year they got rid of that in, but I definitely do agree with that. San Marino only has 33,000 people. It's just way too easy to go in, buy a ton of SIM cards. We've also seen that there are some countries which are less involved in Eurovision, for example like Czechia, who doesn't have a massive amount of public interest. It was also quite easy to rig their televote because the televote numbers were so low. So that's something you need to consider as well. There's no point trying to rig the vote of Spain or UK or Germany because there's thousands and thousands of people voting. It will cost so much. But a smaller country, it's quite easy just to buy a huge bunch of SIM cards. And we have seen this in the past, that people from smaller countries, for example Lithuania and Latvia, were reporting stories of people coming up to them on campuses and giving them SIM cards and asking them to vote for certain countries. One of them may be within these 6. So yes, definitely there used to be a lot more controversies with televoting before. My personal opinion is that's decreased in the teens. What do you call the noughties? Do you call it the noughties? Do you call them the tennies? I feel like that's decreased in the tennies. Funnily enough, that country I'm talking about, their results have also decreased in the tennies as well. So I don't know if that's just since I'm not naming names, but you can probably read between the lines. Now, I'm going to talk about what happened eventually. I just want to give a brief history of kind of cheating within Eurovision as well. Look, first of all, I don't think that cheating is so rampant that it like massively affects the results. I've already seen people saying, oh, the whole competition is political, it's a farce because of this. Nah, it's not. Like, if you think that Eurovision is just about the results, you're totally missing the point. It's about the songs, the artists, the coming together, the giving points to other people, the unity of Europe, the costumes, the singing, the fun, the parties, the national finals for 5 months. So if you think that a few countries trying to diddle the results that they do a little bit better or they qualify completely negates the entire competition, I think you're really lacking a lot of perspective there. This is something that happens in small doses. It does look like the EBU now is trying to do something, be a little bit more proactive about stopping it. So I don't think it's this like rampant thing, and that some ridiculous stuff I've seen from previous artists of how it's predetermined who wins every year. But yeah, we have had dodginess before. Famously, 2013, they still haven't released the split results of the televote and the jury. We just have like an aggregate per decimal point. I'll put it up here. It's very, very strange. It's quite obvious that some dodgy shit went down big time. I'm going to point fingers now very, very much clearly with Azerbaijan, who ended up coming second. I feel like they actually had to step in at that point and say, okay, we actually need to change the results because they've been so manipulated that it's actually going to affect the show. So look, the proof is in the pudding. They still have not released those points. I don't think they ever will, because I think they were so blatantly, obviously rigged. 2011 as well, very dodgy result there. Complete and utter non-favorite winning. Yeah, I think a lot of people agree that that winner was very underwhelming. 2008, I wouldn't consider cheating. For me, that win by Dima Bilan is more just this phenomenon of, if you send an incredibly popular Russian artist, they're going to do extremely well in the televote. And I showed that statistically. I did all the stats, and I think that's just a testament to the fact that there are a large amount of Russian speakers, especially in those eastern countries that have a border with Russia, and they are going to be very focused in voting for this very, very big Russian male pop star. So I don't think that's cheating whatsoever. I just think that is one of the reasons, again, you need a jury, is to counter any of that kind of like diaspora effect. Saw that happen both times with Dima when he came first and second, and we also saw both times with Sergei. So I'll put those stats up here, but you can see that's another argument in favor of the jury. The EBU has already done stuff to kind of counteract some of this tendency towards favoritism within neighboring countries. That's why they have the voting pots. In case you don't know, every time they do the semi-final draws, all the countries are put into pots based on their previous voting patterns, and then they're split in half, so they won't have more than 2 or 3 of their friends from their voting area. And I think that's something that's worked quite effectively as well. What happened this year? First of all, we need to understand that we have a new EBU executive supervisor, Martin Österdahl. This is his second competition. He did 2011 as well. So in case you don't know, Martin is from Sweden. He loves golf. I follow him on Twitter. He never tweets though, but he only follows people who are on the golf tour. He's the new one. The old supervisor was Jan Ola Sand, who's from Norway, who I stand. I have to admit, I was a big, big fan of him. My interpretation of how Jan Ola approached the competition was he knew that there was this kind of like small cheating going on a small scale. I feel he felt it was of such a small nature that it didn't really affect who won, and if it did, he would step in, like for example in 2013, but largely I think he felt it only really affected the mid-table results. Famously, someone has done a PhD on the neighborly voting, and they found that it really doesn't affect who is in the winner section. It only really affects mid-tables up and down a couple of places, which nobody really cares about outside of the Eurovision sphere. So that has actually, someone's done a doctorate on that. So yeah, my opinion is that Jan Ola Sand kind of was like, oh, these feckers. He didn't want to get completely out of control, but he also maybe realized that it couldn't manage it all the time. So he just tried to make sure that things didn't get out of hand. Try to be a little bit just like boys will be boys, that kind of attitude. Now Martin seems to be a little bit more not taking any shit, I think is probably the best way to say it. So this year, I think he sensed an opportunity to really clamp down on this, and he took the opportunity. So this is what happened. These 6 countries basically all voted for each other in the jury. Now it wasn't so blatant that they all put each other in the top 5, but they pretty much did. In terms of vote rigging, it is one of the sloppiest and worst organized vote riggings that I've ever seen. It really is almost like a child had done it. So these countries were accused of voting irregularities. In case you don't know what that means, they'll basically look at how countries are all voting, and they'll see, does that how do their votes compare to how everyone else is. So if you have 5 countries who have all put each other in the top and nobody else has put those countries in the top, obviously that's very, very suspicious that you have everybody else thinks, oh, this song is kind of okay, and then you have these 5 countries like, oh, we only like these other 5 countries, especially these that don't exactly have massive amounts of borders. Like San Marino doesn't border any of them, so it doesn't really make sense that they would have like a regional alignment with others. Montenegro and Azerbaijan obviously far away from each other, like, so there isn't even really like a geographical cultural explanation why these 6 would all be voting for each other. It really does look like someone within them, whether, let's not name names, but they somehow managed to contact each other. These are also 6 countries which you could very, very much argue, other than Poland, I have to admit I was a little bit surprised by Poland because I feel like they were safe anyway, but the other 5, it totally makes sense. They were all borderline qualifiers, definitely not as assured of a place. Montenegro, San Marino, Georgia and Romania, the 4 of those, definitely there is a huge motivation for them to get extra Euro points. That is undeniable. All 4 of them were not in the qualification odds to qualify before the competition, so there's a huge incentive for them. Azerbaijan were hovering around 10th or 11th. Again, a big incentive for them to kind of like secure their spot. And as I said, jury points are much more easy to manipulate. Azerbaijan definitely has a history of seeking out points from alternative means. Let's put it that way. Now, what's special about this year is how completely and utterly upfront the EBU has been about it. They've released a press release, which I will leave in the comment section down below, which I'm looking at right now. This is available to everyone. They actually gave the breakdown of the original votes that the jury members from those 6 countries put through. So 4 of these 6 countries had the other 5 in their top 5. That is like just the stupidest rigging you could possibly do. It's not even remotely subtle. Probability of those 6 all having the other 5 pretty much in their top 5. There was one instance, Montenegro actually had Serbia as their number 2, and then Poland had Sweden as their 5 and Finland as their 6, but Poland still had 4 of the 5 in their top 4. So like pretty much across the board with all these 6 countries, they had the other 5 in the top 5. The probabilities of that, I have studied statistics as part of my undergraduate degree. It wasn't my main part, it was one of the courses I did, but I'm very interested in statistics anyway. We're talking about like the chances of are like 1 in a million. It is so improbable that you would have all of those. Funnily enough, one of the countries argued back saying that Sweden, Australia and Belgium, who was it? All of these brokers have released statements since. Romania actually came back and said, well, Sweden, Australia and Belgium all gave each other points. Now this shows how badly these countries understand statistics, because Australia and Sweden got points from almost everyone at the top. So that isn't a statistical anomaly. If everybody's given them top points, it's not surprising that Australia and Sweden are going to be near the top of those other juries. In terms of the Belgium, you literally then just need to go through Sweden and Australia's points and find the first person that they commonly put high, which in this case was Belgium. So for me, that shows a really poor understanding of statistics from these delegations, and that's probably the reason why they hit it so badly. This is really poorly hidden in terms of jury rigging. I can't emphasize that enough, how really childlike this is, which makes it even more upsetting for me that really none of these countries have come out and apologized. I'll go into their statements later, but they've been pretty brazen about their replies, although they're also kind of pivoting a lot as well. I'll get into that later. So when the EBU sees a voting irregularity, which is basically a euphemism for vote rigging, they will use what's called an aggregated result. So that's where those pots that I came in earlier, I'll put the pots up again here. They'll take an average of the other countries in those pots, multiplied by an algorithm, and then they'll get new results based off of that. Now, this algorithm caused a little bit of controversy. Again, this was mentioned in a couple of these countries' statements, saying, oh, this mysterious algorithm is a form of cheating. It's not. I get why they put an algorithm in, because they don't want these countries to know the formula to work out the points, because if they did, they would be able to cheat better. And the fact that they don't know the algorithm is one of the reasons why these countries cheated so badly. I can't get over, I cannot emphasize how bad this cheating was. It really was like a 9-year-old. And like that Montenegro vote for Serbia was just, oh god, it was so badly done. And then Poland's vote, Poland is the only one I'm probably not 100% sure. The other ones are like very blatantly organized. Poland's one's a little bit unusual that they put Sweden and Finland a little bit high. For me, that kind of gives the impression that maybe not all the jurors were involved. Maybe it was just a couple of them. I'll give you an example just to like explain how weird these votes are. For example, Georgia got 13 total points from the jury outside of these other 5 countries. So these 5 countries. But with these 5 countries, they got 10, 12, 4, 6, 10. So just huge points. Pretty much like just way more than everyone else. You see generally very few people put the Georgia song up near the top, but suddenly you just have these 5 countries who all love it, and they all happen to like all the exact same stuff, only exclusively. Yeah, that's just one example, but you can go through for all of them. Same thing with Montenegro. They got 7 points from Serbia, 3 from North Macedonia, not surprising considering their neighbors, 1 point from Spain. Other than that, none of the juries gave them any points. But in these other 5, Montenegro got 7, 10, 7, 8, 7. These countries are giving more than Serbia gave in the jury. So you can see, now I can literally do that for all. I'm not going to go through all 5 of them, but you can get, I've just picked the first 2 there, and you can see they're just giving way more points than everyone else. It just does not make any sense statistically whatsoever. Fortunately, this didn't change the results in a very obvious way. It didn't change who the qualifiers were. And I think that's why the EBU and Martin Österdahl in particular said, this is a brilliant opportunity for us to call them out, because there's not going to be too many people pissed off afterwards because the results were the same, but it is a chance for us to expose these people. Now, I'm not saying these are the only 6 people who've ever cheated in Eurovision history, but this is a case of 6 of them getting absolutely and utterly caught red-handed in the most perfect scenario where you can point the finger at them, but it won't change the results either way. And that means for future years, countries will know, okay, they're looking out for this. We can't do this so obviously anymore. As soon as they start trying to hide the rigging, then it becomes less effective, because really, if you want rigging to work really well, you need to put all those countries up near the top, otherwise it doesn't have the same effect. So it dilutes their ability to cheat in the future. So I really like this mood. It kind of sets a tone for Martin Österdahl's leadership of the Eurovision, that he's not going to put up with this like complete BS, very blatant cheating. So coming to these statements, the majority of them really do pivot. None of them kind of like talk about the semi-final. You look at Georgia's statement, they're basically like, oh, we voted for Ukraine in the final. You know, our act wasn't even in the final. Nobody's talking about the final. And actually a lot of these 6 statements, they'll try and pivot onto talking about the final, how they were pissed off that their points weren't read out. Romania complained about their points not being read out either. Azerbaijan talked about how there weren't technical difficulties, but they didn't get to read their points. Nobody's disputing about the final. The problem is in the semi-final, as soon as these countries cheated in the semi-final, as far as the EBU and Martin Österdahl is concerned, they probably just thought, nah, their votes are invalid. You don't just get to cheat. And they go, oh, okay, the cheating's done now. Now you can vote in the final. This semi-final would have happened on Wednesday during the jury show, so they wouldn't have had time to find a new jury by then. Plus, on top of that, they wouldn't have wanted to have told these countries. So a couple of the countries complained as well. They're like, why didn't you tell us on Wednesday night? I don't see their logic there, that they feel have a right to be told when they've been found cheating so that they can change their cheating mechanism and hide it a little bit more. So that doesn't really make any sense for me. I don't think they're owed that right to cheat better. Yeah, I can see the position. 3 of the countries were allowed to read their votes out. I think that is probably down to the fact that even with the aggravated results, the 12 points went to the same people. Keep in mind the spokesperson only reads out the 12, so the EBU were able to change the 1 to 10 on screen themselves. So even if they received these points, they cancel them, put their new aggravated 1 to 10, and then if the spokesperson is going to read the same 12, well, just let them go ahead and do that. If it's a new 12, then Martin Österdahl comes on, and that's what he did for Georgia and Romania and one other, I think it was Azerbaijan. In terms of repercussions, what's going to happen to these countries, it's hard to say, because really it needs to be written in the rules. You can't just make up punishments. You can't just disqualify them from next year, or minus them 50 points, or give them a shitty running order next year. Any repercussions that happen like that have to be written into the EBU rules. You can see now why I didn't want to put this in my semi-final 2 video. I was disappointed in all the statements from these 6 countries. For me, when you've been caught cheating in such a blatant way, the honorable thing to do is to come forward and apologize to the EBU, to the other contestants who you tried to fuck over, to your artists who are not involved. Like, the artists in these countries are not involved in this, so it's really unfair. I actually particularly feel for WRS, who I feel has done an amazing job for Romania this year, writing and choreographing and performing the song. I feel like it's very much a one-man show. So I think really unfair that his qualification and good result in the final has been tainted a little bit. For me, it hasn't. I still think he's absolutely brilliant. Really sad for Achille Lauro as well, that his like kind of name has been dragged through the mud. San Marino's statement is by far the worst. Not only is it completely and utterly unapologetic, but on top of that, they're accusing the EBU of rigging it for Sweden and Australia. Again, it's not surprising the aggregate results favored those countries because they're the other countries who did well in the jury. That's what aggravated results are. It is getting the other results and kind of averaging them out based on the location of the countries. It's not surprising that the countries who did the best with the jury did the best in the aggravated result. If you don't want that to happen, then don't fucking cheat. That's the solution, not complaining about it afterwards. So really, like, they also made a statement saying that the EBU told them that they were the best songs, which is just so obvious that the EBU wouldn't do such like a sloppy statement to them. That's what San Marino TV would do, because they can't even do like baby levels of cheating correctly. It really just, I'm just apologizing to the fans for this and just like bringing the contest into disrepute as well. So that would have been a nice way to do it. Unfortunately, none of these countries apologized. They're all denying it. Like I said, a lot of them are pivoting away from the semi-final and talking about the final results, which are completely and utterly irrelevant, trying to change the topic. Okay, so what do I think are the solutions for this? Look, I don't think it's an easy situation to manage. I think what actually they've done this year is very clever. They've seized an opportunity where they can call these people out without it having to cause much drama in the results afterwards. It's not like 11th place North Macedonia would have gotten through if these people hadn't cheated. But yeah, the most likely person who got dicked over was North Macedonia, the unluckiest country in the competition by a million billion miles. Oh my God, I feel for them so much. What's the number one solution to this whole thing is stop fucking cheating. That's the number one solution. It's not on the EBU to come up with a solution. It's on these delegations to grow the fuck up and stop cheating. That is the number one, the number two, the number three solution to this problem is stop cheating. Get your jurors, put them in a room, let them make their own decisions. If a song is good and they feel something when they're watching it, they're gonna vote for it. If you can't qualify without having to rig, your song isn't good enough. That's solution number two. Come up with a better song, do better staging, engage more with fans, get more feedback for the competition. Just do a better job, be better at your job at putting forward a really strong Eurovision entry instead of having to do this like last minute stuff where you haven't done your homework and you're having to copy off someone else and cheat through the test. They're the main solutions. Now, I do think a lot of people are going to put the thing onto EBU. What are the EBU solutions? I've seen a lot of people talking about the juries being bigger. I don't know if that particularly helps. It just means that there's more people to bribe. I suppose that makes it a little bit more difficult to do. It also makes it more difficult and expensive to organize if you have more people. Some of my possible suggestions are, I think if you put like higher named people on the panel, so for example, Tusse was on the Swedish panel this year. I think if you get more former contestants in, or people who have some sort of like reputational damage from being associated with bribery. So for example, if you put someone who had like a big pop star or something like that, or someone who's in a position where if they were caught rigging, it would actually affect their career. A lot of these people who are on the juries, I don't want to say they're nobodies, but yeah, they're pretty much nobodies. They're in the music profession, but they might just be like a composer, or they might just be like someone from the local orchestra or something like that. A lot of them are kind of just not household names. So there's no real massive loss to them if they got a big bribe or an incentive to vote one way. There's no repercussions afterwards. Nobody knows who they are. They'll be walking down the street, nobody will know about it. So I think having slightly bigger profile names on the jury might help in terms of deterring, particularly in countries which we think are higher risk of being swayed by incentives to vote for particular people. I do think the EBU can possibly look at the EBU reference group who wrote the rules. They can possibly write in some new rules talking about possible punishments, whether it be a fine or losing points or being automatically drawn into the first half in the next year or something like that. They don't want these countries to withdraw. I don't want these countries to withdraw either. I just want them to stop cheating. And I have to admit, and you have to emphasize, it's not just these six countries. They're kind of like the 6 boys who got caught. There are other people who've been naughty as well, but just did on a smaller scale, or this year weren't caught. This will send a strong message to everybody that cheating is not okay and they're doing something about it. They're not just kind of like boys will be boys, we'll let it go anymore. This is like a new era of trying to be more fair, and overall I think it's going to help the competition. Another small possibility is they could make it some way for the jury to report when they've been approached by someone, some way of anonymously reporting bribery or that they've been asked to vote a certain way. That's difficult because I think jurors, if they do that, they'll feel like they'll lose their place in the jury, which is obviously quite a fun thing to do. Another possible solution with more jurors is that you have the 5 jurors, but you've got a backup jury who are separate, and you could check the results and how much those match within the country, because really there should be like a small correlation. Obviously they'll make acceptances for like the fact that different people have different opinions, but you shouldn't have, like, for example, in the main jury that they have the 5 countries all at the top, but in this like backup jury there's a huge difference. That would be alarm bells. But yeah, that is everything I think. That is everything what I think. That is what I think about the semi-final 2 voting scandal. Please let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Let's try and keep it remotely civilized and sane when we're talking about this. And of course, now that I've just talked about this, my semi-final 2 results points breakdown will be much more short and concise, because I don't have to I've spent 38 minutes talking about this. I will edit it down. I'll try to edit it down to 15-20 minutes. Okay, and thanks so much for watching. I'm seeing another Eurovision reaction video very soon. Goodbye.